Hey, good morning, y'all. So, what I'm doing today is doing a non pampered chef cooking demo. So, just bear with me for a few moments while I finish getting set up. I hit the start button by accident a little prematurely. So, give me one more second. I'm going to grab one more thing. All right. So, I've had a lot of people ask me about canning and what I do. So I'm just going to do some walk you through a couple of my techniques. So in this pan right here, I have put together cucumber slices that have been soaking in a saltwater brine with dill and some shallots and some Chinese five spice and some red pepper flakes and salted water for about 36 hours. And so when I make my pickles, I like to let them do the fermentation process for about 30 hours ahead of time. So these are going to be sour pickles. So I'm going to walk you through what I do when I make my sour pickles. I'll talk about the canning process just a little bit, and then show you how I do it. And then I'm going to do another video, a live demo of how I do my bread and butter. My bread and butter pickles are a little bit more extensive, but still just as good as the sour pickles. So before I begin the process of making my sour pickles, I like to reserve some of the brining liquid, and this is what the brining liquid looks like after it's been setting for about 36 hours. It has the dill, it has the essence of the shallots, the garlic, and whatnot. And I'm going to use this as part of my pickling liquid. So I reserve part of that because I think it just helps enhance the flavor of the pickling liquid. So what I'm going to do now is drain off my pickles. I'm going to start my pickling liquid because I do like to have that heated up before I jar my pickles. So give me a quick second. I'm going to run back, strain the pickles, rinse them off, the cucumbers, because they're not pickles at this point. And then I will be with you in a second. So just bear with me. And I'm sure you didn't want me to come into your house 3 hours ago when I was doing the whole brining process. Grab my colander. All right. So for my sour pickles, I could do 1 part um, distilled white vinegar. And then 3 parts apple cider vinegar. Now this is a 4-cup measure. And then this is 4 cups of brine as well. Now too, this is my seasoning packet. So I season my pickling liquid the same way that I season my brine. However, I'm adding garlic powder, onion powder to it, and this also will have a little sugar in it, not a lot, because again these should be sour pickles. And so I add that into here. You notice I don't add salt because again salt has already been added. Since they're brined in salt, I'm not going to add additional salt. So I'm going to just bring this up to a boil. And I'm going to leave the vinegar here because again I'm going to be making bread and butter pickles almost immediately following. One thing with your sour pickles, you want to make sure that they're weighted down. So when I put them in the refrigerator, in the pan that I use, I'll put a plate on top of them and then a bag of brined water. And that way it allows them to stay weighted down and then everything gets fermented. So I like to clean as I go. So I may be off camera for an extended period of times. So what I'm going to do now is turn the camera so that you can see my jars. And I'm going to start filling my jars with the pickles, with the cucumbers. Now I do have a canning funnel right here, which helps this process a little bit easier. You want to try to avoid overfilling your jars. See, unlike my bread and butter, the sour pickles don't get cooked. They go straight from the refrigerator into the jar, whereas the bread and butters, you'll see, we'll cook those before we jar them. So yeah, that 36-hour fermentation process is important in my opinion. And you want to make sure that you have the right measurement of salt, because if you under measure, then they won't ferment. And if you put too much salt, they won't ferment. And so we're heating up our brining mixture with the 1 part white distilled vinegar and 3 parts of cider vinegar. Now you can choose your spices that you want to have, but I remember when we were kids, my mom would pickle. Well, it was actually my oldest brother. She showed him a recipe, and he just kind of just ran with it. But that recipe used the mace in the recipe, and so I thought the Chinese 5-spice would really replace the need for the mace in the recipe. My cucumbers comes from Perkins Orchard. Of course, you know I go there almost every other weekend, it seems like. It looks like I may have to clean and sterilize some more jars. The sterilization process for the jars includes washing them thoroughly, right? And then going back and then boiling them for about 10 minutes. Make sure you know your elevation, because that does make a difference, especially during the canning process. The higher your elevation, the longer you do process them in the water when you go to do the final sealing. Which I didn't know that when I started this process, but as I learned, all of that is important. So now, at this point, we're just going to wait till our pickling liquid is hot. And it's almost there, actually. So let me run this to the back. In this pot, I do separate lids and rings. I keep them warmed in a separate pot. And you'll want to get a canning set. I ordered mine from Amazon. You also probably, at this stage, you might be able to find it at Walmart or a local hardware store. Judy, you're actually the reason why I decided to do this, because I thought, I mean, with the other people, you're not the only person who has been asking, but I thought, maybe I should go ahead and dive into one quick demo. So, again, so I'm going to go ahead and start adding my pickling liquid. And I'm actually going to scoot my cooktop a little bit closer. And I learned how to can out of being bored during COVID. And I just needed something to keep my mind occupied. So canning it was, and my mom did it as a kid, and I just thought it would be something fun to do. And so now this is the second year I've been canning. Add some more of our pickling liquid. And so this is how easy it is for the sour pickles. And again, you want to leave a little gap of space in between your in your jars at the top. In the background, I have my canning pot warming up with the water so that when we're ready to process these, we can immediately process them. They're going to process for 10 minutes in hot boiling water, and then hopefully after that we'll get the proper seal on them. I do recommend that you taste your brine just so that you know what it tastes like before it goes into the jar, because once the jars are sealed, you won't be able to go back and correct the brine. And it should be, with me, because I use a little sugar in it, it'll have a slight sweet, but not really a really strong sweet taste to it. Because again, these are sours. I haven't froze produce. Um, I like I said, I only got into canning just because it just took my mind off, being stuck in a house for a whole year without. And I live by myself, so this was just something to do. It allowed me to get out, to go to the market, to pick out my fresh produce. And it allowed me to learn a new skill. And as a facts teacher, having a new tool in my toolbox meant something that I could teach my students down the road. And I believe canning is a lost science nowadays. And so this is going to be something that I'll be doing with my students. In the next coming years, up and coming years of being in the classroom. So this is done, so I'm going to run this to the back. While I'm back there, I'm going to grab a towel. And then we're going to go ahead and put our rings on. If you notice that you spilled a little bit on the sides of the glass, you want to take a towel and just kind of wipe it, like so. And so sometimes the jars are hot, and what I do when they're hot, I'll take the towel and just hold on to the jars, and then you just want to make sure that they're properly closed. Like so. Now once you process these, you're not going to touch them for 24 hours. That's the hardest part, because you're always proud of your hard work. Now there are two thoughts once they come out of the pot. Turn them upside down. But what I've read is just to leave them right side up. And then allow them to seal that way. And I'm going to use this video as part of my demos for class. So ask any questions that you may have, any additional questions. Feel free to ask those questions, because I'm sure that these will be the same questions that my students will have as well. Alright, so I'm also going, at this point, we're ready to process these. So I'm going to walk these over to the big pot, to my stock pot in the kitchen. And these jars aren't hot, so I don't necessarily need my jar tongs at this stage. But I will need them once they've boiled for 10 minutes in the hot water. All right. So again, like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to message me those questions. At this stage, I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. I'm going to get cleaned up. So I'm going to stop the video at this point, get cleaned up, set up for my next demo. For this one, you'll need 4 cups of granulated sugar, some mustard seed, some turmeric, some celery seed. I use Chinese spice, of course, and 3 cups of cider vinegar. I'm going to put my rings and lids back on the stove so that they stay warm and sanitized. Again, the jars have been properly washed and boiled and sanitized. And then I'm going to go ahead and rinse off my brined cucumbers that are for the bread and butter pickles. And then we'll start the brining process for those in a few seconds. So, give me a few moments. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to stop the video, and then I'll come back live again to show you how to do the bread and butter pickles. Yes, you can reuse jars. However, you cannot reuse the lids and the seals. So you want to make sure that you go out and buy a box of lids and seals so that you can use those when canning. Now, I do keep my old lids and seals if I'm giving away stuff. Like, you know, last year I did the cookies in the jar, and so that made the difference. You know what I mean? Because I do have jars without lids, so I can reuse those that way. So, but yeah, jars definitely can be reused if you want to reuse them. I'm gonna add a few extra lids. I think I took a couple off yesterday. All right, good questions, and I will be back in a few moments.